I signed the inheritance papers. My father raged, "You stole my birthright." Then I found the hidden drawer. "He promised to burn these," he whispered to his sister. Suddenly my life was evidence of a crime. I signed the papers, but not the ones they expected. While they were busy screaming about fairness, family loyalty, and everything they believed they were owed, I was holding a secret that could destroy the Sterling name from the inside out. My grandfather, Samuel Sterling, had been dead for 4 months, but my father, Caleb, wasn't mourning him. He was mourning the bank account he thought he was about to inherit. Caleb had spent his entire life building a reputation out of our last name. He was the golden boy of Boulder, Colorado. "This is a mistake," Caleb hissed. His face had gone blotchy and red, clashing with his silk tie. Samuel was 92. He wasn't in his right mind for the last year. "You manipulated him, didn't you, Tessa? You sat in that big house and whispered in his ear while I was out doing the real work for this family. You played the devoted granddaughter while I kept the business alive." I didn't answer. I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap and looked across the room at my Aunt Abigail. She was sitting in the corner, gripping her handbag so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Abigail had always been quiet, almost ghost-like. She had lived in the carriage house on Samuel's estate for 30 years, a permanent fixture on the property who never seemed to have a life of her own. She never married. She never traveled. She barely spoke unless spoken to, but she was always there. She packed my school lunches when I was little. She sat beside my bed when I had night terrors. She remembered my favorite tea, my favorite sweater, my allergy medication, the books I liked, the songs that calmed me down. She was more of a mother to me than the woman in the blurry Polaroid I kept in my wallet. The woman named Samantha. The woman Caleb said had died in a car crash when I was 2. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Caleb," he said carefully, "the will is valid." It was updated 6 months before Samuel's death, and he completed a full competency evaluation with 2 independent doctors before signing. He left the estate, the stock portfolio, and the Fort Collins properties entirely to Tessa. The total valuation is roughly $4 million. Caleb's jaw tightened. The lawyer continued. "You and Abigail were each left a stipend of $10,000, provided neither of you contests the will." "10,000? Caleb roared. He slammed his fist on the mahogany table so hard the pens rattled. "I'm his only son. Abigail is his daughter. We spent decades maintaining this family's image, and he leaves the entire kingdom to this child." He turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that didn't even pretend to be love. It was hatred. Not disappointment. Not anger. Hatred. He didn't see a daughter who had just lost her grandfather. He saw an obstacle. A thief. A 29-year-old woman standing between him and the life he believed belonged to him. Abigail finally spoke. "Caleb, please," she whispered. "Just sit down." Samuel made his choice. We knew how he was. "No," Caleb snapped, pointing at me. "We're contesting it. Undue influence. I'm going to drag this through every court in Colorado. I'll make sure you don't see a dime until you're old enough to understand you never earned any of it." He leaned closer. "Get ready, Tessa. I will strip you of everything before I let you walk away with his legacy." Then he stormed out. Abigail followed him a few seconds later, her head down, her purse clutched against her chest. The heavy oak doors swung shut behind them with a sound that felt like a gavel. I sat there in the silence, my hands trembling under the table. I didn't feel rich. I felt like a target. 2 weeks later, I moved back into the estate. The house felt less like a home and more like a tomb. It was massive, cold, and beautiful in the way expensive things can be beautiful without being warm. Stone, glass, dark wood, high ceilings, long hallways, and rooms that echoed even when no one spoke. Samuel had spent 40 years perfecting that house. Now every floorboard groaned beneath me like the place itself resented my presence. Officially, I was there to inventory the contents for the legal fight Caleb had already started. But really, I was searching. I wanted to know why Samuel had bypassed both of his children and left everything to me. Not a token amount. Not a trust. Everything. Every night, I saw the light on in the carriage house across the garden. Abigail was still there, watching the main house like a ghost. I wondered if she was angry. I wondered if she was scared. I wondered if she knew something I didn't. I spent the first few days in Samuel's study. It smelled like old tobacco, leather-bound books, and regret. It had always been the center of the house. The place no one entered unless Samuel allowed it. The place Caleb avoided unless summoned. I went through ledgers, legal folders, bank statements, old photographs, and drawers full of useless keepsakes. Everything looked ordinary. Until I tried to move the desk. Samuel's oak desk was enormous. It had to weigh 300 pounds. I was trying to push it closer to the window for better light when the left side snagged on the rug. I pulled it back, irritated, and heard a distinct click. I froze. One of the decorative side panels had shifted open. It was a carved piece of molding I had walked past 1,000 times without noticing. My heart started beating hard enough to hurt. I crouched down and pulled the panel open. It wasn't a drawer. It was a hidden cavity, deep and narrow, built directly into the frame of the desk. Inside was a thick manila envelope. The edges were frayed and yellowed. On the front, in Samuel's shaky late-life handwriting, were 3 words. The price tag. I sat on the cold hardwood floor with the envelope in my lap for a long time. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. Every instinct told me to put it back, close the panel, move the desk, and pretend I had never found it. But the silence of that house demanded an answer. So I broke the seal. The first thing that fell out was not a letter. It was a stack of canceled checks. They were dated between 1996 and 1998, all made out to a law firm in Reno, Nevada. Each one was for a shocking amount. $50,000, $80,000, $100,000. In the memo line, Samuel had written the same 2 words every time. Discretionary services. Reno. I had never been to Nevada. Caleb always told me we were a Colorado family, rooted in the mountains for generations. So why was Samuel sending a fortune to a law firm in Reno the year I was born? I dug deeper. The next stack was handwritten letters. The paper was thin and fragile, almost translucent. I recognized one set of handwriting immediately. Caleb's. That arrogant, sweeping script I had seen on birthday cards, legal notes, business documents, and checks. The other handwriting was smaller, more delicate, cramped and hesitant. Abigail's. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. I thought they were private letters between siblings who were unusually close. They talked about the pressure of the Sterling name. They talked about Samuel being controlling. They talked about wanting to breathe without being watched. Then the tone changed. Caleb's letters became possessive. Abigail's became ashamed. One letter, dated May 1996, made my entire body go cold. "We can't keep doing this," Abigail had written. "Pop knows. I can see it in his eyes. He looks at me like I'm something dirty. Caleb, he says if we don't stop, he'll send me away. He says he'll ruin you. I'm scared. I'm scared of what's growing inside me." I stopped breathing. May 1996. I was born in November 1996. I scrambled through the envelope until I found the document that finished destroying me. A medical discharge summary from a private clinic outside Reno. Patient name, Abigail Sterling. Procedure, live birth, female. There was no Samantha. There was no tragic car crash on a rainy mountain road. The woman I had called Aunt Abigail my entire life was not my aunt. She was my biological mother. And Caleb was not just my father. He was her brother. I sat there in Samuel's dark study with the letters scattered around me like wreckage. My whole life began rewriting itself in real time. I remembered the way Samuel looked at Caleb and Abigail during Christmas dinners. Not with pride. Not even anger. With cold, vibrating disgust. I remembered how he insisted I go to boarding school 3 states away the moment I turned 12. Caleb said Samuel wanted me to have the best education. But that wasn't it. Samuel was getting me out of that house. He was trying to break the loop. Everything he did was an attempt to manage the fallout of a crime he was too proud, too cowardly, and too obsessed with the family name to report. He paid lawyers in Reno to bury my origin. He invented Samantha, a ghost of a woman with no relatives and no history, to explain my existence to the neighbors. He kept Abigail in the carriage house like a prisoner on a golden leash. Close enough to watch me grow up. Close enough to pack my lunches and hold me when I cried. But never close enough to claim me. And Caleb. My father. The golden boy. He spent 29 years looking me in the eye and telling me stories about Samantha's beautiful smile, Samantha's laugh, Samantha's love for Colorado wildflowers. He lied to me every single day while sharing a family name with the sister he destroyed. I felt so nauseous I had to press my forehead against the desk to keep from passing out. I wasn't a Sterling legacy. I was evidence. A living, breathing consequence of something Samuel had spent millions trying to hide. Then I understood why Samuel had left everything to me. It wasn't love. Not completely. It was guilt. He knew Caleb and Abigail were a closed circuit. He knew if they inherited the estate, they would stay there forever, feeding off each other's secrets until they died. By leaving everything to me, Samuel wasn't just rewarding me. He was handing me a weapon. He was giving me the means to leave, to erase the house, to take the money, and to never depend on any of them again. The envelope wasn't just evidence. It was the price tag of my silence. Or maybe the cost of my freedom. I looked again at the checks. The letters. The medical record. The law firm. The fake mother. The fake life. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. Caleb wanted a fight? He wanted to drag me through court and call me a manipulator? Fine. He wanted to play the grieving rightful heir? I would give him one final performance. I spent the rest of the night scanning every document into my laptop. I made 3 backups. 1 on a physical drive I hid inside the house. 2 in encrypted cloud folders. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window and watched the sun rise over the mountains that had helped hide the Sterling family's secrets for nearly 3 decades. Across the garden, the light flickered on in the carriage house. I saw Abigail's silhouette behind the curtains. For 1 second, I felt pity for her. For the young woman who had been trapped by her father's control, her brother's shadow, and her own shame. Then I remembered the lie. 29 years of Auntie Abby. 29 years of fake stories about Samantha. 29 years of letting me mourn a mother who never existed. The pity disappeared. Only the fire remained. I picked up the phone and called Caleb. My voice was cold. "Dad," I said, and the word tasted like poison. "I'm ready to talk about a settlement. Bring Abigail. We're meeting at the main house at noon." He started to speak, but I cut him off. "And don't bring your lawyer. You're going to want this to stay private." At 12 o'clock sharp, I stood by the window and watched them walk up the long driveway. Caleb was in front, wearing one of his charcoal power suits, his stride aggressive and confident. He looked like a man coming to collect what he believed he was owed. Abigail followed 10 paces behind him, head down, hands tucked into the sleeves of her oversized cardigan. They didn't ring the bell. Caleb still had his key. I heard the front door open. Then the sharp click of his expensive shoes against the marble floor. "Tessa," he called through the foyer. His voice filled the house like it still belonged to him. I was sitting at the head of the dining room table. The manila envelope was placed directly in front of me, centered on the polished wood like a centerpiece. I didn't stand when they entered. Caleb walked in first and pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table. Abigail drifted to the sideboard, hovering there like furniture someone had forgotten to move. "I'm glad you've come to your senses," Caleb said, leaning back and crossing his legs. "This court battle would have been expensive and, frankly, embarrassing for you." I said nothing. "We've worked out a fair number," he continued. $2 million. You keep the house, you keep the Fort Collins properties, and we go our separate ways. It's a generous offer for someone who clearly took advantage of an old man's declining health. I looked at him. Then I looked at Abigail. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at a painting on the far wall, breathing in short, shallow bursts. "I'm not interested in your $2 million, I said. Caleb's smile faltered. "Now, Tessa, don't be difficult. You don't want this to get ugly. I've already spoken to the partners at the firm. We have the resources to keep this tied up in probate for years. I have a counteroffer." I picked up the manila envelope and slid it across the table. It stopped directly in front of him. "I want you to sign a total contact severance. You drop the lawsuit. Abigail moves out of the carriage house by tomorrow morning. Both of you leave Boulder. You never call me. You never email me. You never come near any property I own. You disappear from my life and you stay gone." Caleb laughed. That sharp, condescending laugh I had heard my whole life. "And why would I do that?" he asked. "We're family, Tessa. You're being hysterical. You have no leverage. Open the envelope." He stared at me for a moment, annoyed more than concerned. Then he sighed and pulled it open. He took out the checks first. His expression shifted when he saw the Reno law firm. Then he pulled out the medical discharge papers. The room went so silent I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen 3 rooms away. Caleb's face didn't just go pale. It turned gray. The arrogance drained out of him like someone had opened a valve. He flipped through the letters. His own handwriting. Abigail's handwriting. The proof of everything he thought Samuel had buried. Abigail saw his face and made a small, broken sound. "He promised," Caleb whispered. His voice was no longer booming. It was hollow, almost childlike. "He promised he burned them. He swore every file was gone." "Samuel lied to you," I said. "Just like you lied to me." He looked up. "Every day of my life," I continued. "Every time you told me about Samantha. Every time you told me I had her eyes. Every time you let me call her Aunt Abigail while she watched me grow up from the carriage house." Abigail sank into the chair beside the sideboard and covered her face with both hands. She started to cry. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a thin, keening sound that made my skin crawl. "Tessa," Caleb said, gripping the letters. "You have to understand. We were young. We didn't know how to stop. Pop handled everything. He said it was better this way. To protect the name. To protect you." "To protect me?" I stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "You didn't protect me. You turned my entire existence into a cover-up. You let me live a lie for 29 years so you could keep playing the perfect Sterling family. You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself." I pulled a legal document from my folder. My own lawyer had drafted it the day before. "Sign it," I said. "Drop the lawsuit. Walk away. If you don't, I'm not just taking the clinic records and letters to the authorities. I'm taking them to the press. I'll make sure every client at your firm, every neighbor on the street, and every person who ever praised your family values knows exactly what kind of man you are." Caleb stared at the papers. Then at Abigail, who was rocking in her chair, completely undone. He knew it was over. In Boulder, image was everything. If this got out, he wouldn't just lose the money. He would lose every room he had ever walked into with his head held high. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly, he had to grip his own wrist to steady it. Then he signed. He pushed the paper toward Abigail. She signed without reading it, her tears blurring the ink. "Get out," I said. They didn't argue. They didn't apologize. They left that dining room like ghosts. I watched from the window as they walked down the driveway. They didn't walk together. Caleb stayed on one side of the pavement. Abigail stayed on the other. Two people bound by a secret, but unable to stand beside each other once it was exposed. I didn't wait for nostalgia to soften me. The next morning, I called a developer. I didn't care about the historical value of the estate. I didn't care about the marble, the oak, the imported stone, or the rooms where generations of Sterlings had pretended to be better than everyone else. I wanted the house stripped. I wanted the carriage house leveled. I wanted the ground cleared. Maybe that sounds cruel. Maybe it was. But I could not build a future inside a monument to my own lie. Now I'm sitting in a hotel room, listening to rumors spread through town. People are asking why Caleb Sterling suddenly closed his office and moved out of state overnight. They're asking why Abigail disappeared from the carriage house after 30 years. They're asking why the Sterling estate is surrounded by fencing and demolition crews. I'm not answering. I've already changed my name. I've already moved the money into accounts they can't touch. Some mornings, I look in the mirror and struggle to breathe. I see his jaw. I see her eyes. I wonder if I'll ever look at myself and not see that hidden drawer in Samuel's study. I won. I have the inheritance. I have the freedom. I have the truth. But to get it, I had to destroy the only world I ever knew. The bulldozers started this morning. I stood at the edge of the property and watched the first scoop tear through the roof of the study. The same room where Samuel hid the price of my life inside an old desk. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The air in Boulder was crisp and clean. But to me, it will always smell like dust, old paper, and everything my family tried to bury. So am I the jerk for using their secret to strip them of the inheritance and leave them with nothing, or was I justified in destroying the people who spent 30 years making my life a lie?